Welcome to Click for Biology. We're going to be looking at the abiotic and biotic factors that affect the size and the distribution of populations of species. So that is the number of individuals within a species and where those individuals are located. So we're looking at two aspects, abiotic and biotic. So the size and the distribution of a population. So this is we'll recall that size is the number of, and the distribution is the location of a population. So what is the distribution of grizzly bears? Or what is the distribution of brown bears or black bears in comparison? And it turns out that when we ask questions about the size of a population and where that population is located, there are two sets of factors which determine that. There are the biotic ones or the biological ones. And these include aspects such as an organism, the number of individuals within a species may be determined by the predation to which they are subjected. So the number of deer within a forest may be subject to the number of wolves which are in that location. Or indeed, we can reverse that, and that is that the number of wolves in that forest may be determined by the amount of prey, the number of deer which are present. Within a population, there can be competition as well. And so if we return to our example of a forest and deer, if there are a large number of deer, then they will compete for what we would call limited resources. So there's only a certain amount of food available. And the more individuals that are present within that forest, within that deer population, the greater the competition. Parasitism is when you have a host organism and then another organism lives on the host, using the host as possibly a food source, possibly a place to locate itself, and the host suffers because of this. It's closely related to the idea of disease. Disease is a biological factor. Pathogens causing disease are transmitted from one member of the population to the next. And of course, the denser the population, then the faster the disease will spread. So these are some typical biotic factors that determine the size of a population and where that population is located. Abiotic factors should also be considered, such as the temperature range in the location, the humidity present in that location, precipitation, and light intensity. All of these things tend to be measured both in the short term, but also over longer periods, such as annual periods, and indeed annual patterns over longer periods like so. And these, of course, are all aspects of climate. When you are answering exam questions and they ask for abiotic factors, try to avoid using the word climate and try to avoid using the word weather. The weather, of course, is the short-term version. Climate is longer term. Avoid using those two terms and instead specify these physical abiotic factors. And of course, previously we discussed how longitude and latitude on a global scale can dramatically impact on the population size and the distribution of any species. When we take a look at the patterns in biological factors and physical factors, we tend to notice certain patterns or trends. Where an ecosystem is dominated by biotic factors, where the biotic factors are more important than the abiotic factors, we tend to find locations in which there is greater biodiversity. So that would be typical of a tropical rainforest. A tropical rainforest will have many, many more species present than you would find in a polar tundra. The biotic or dominated ecosystems also tend to show greater resilience, which is to say that they have the ability to recover from disruption much better than those which are dominated by abiotic physical factors. We have the idea of complex interactions, and here I'm referring to that in the tropical rainforests and perhaps the temperate rainforests, that the food chains can be longer and food webs are generally more complex. At the opposite end of the spectrum, where the ecosystem is dominated by abiotic factors, we tend to find low biodiversity. So that would be typical of extreme deserts and the polar tundra regions. These locations are very susceptible to change, so the abiotic factors can radically impact on the populations and their distribution in these locations. These locations place the organisms which live in them under tremendous environmental stress. When we look at all of the ecosystems together, what we also notice is that biotic factors tend to be density dependent. So the spread of disease or predation, feeding, depends very much on the number of individuals who are present. But abiotic factors tend to be independent, density independent. And so if there's a winter storm or a flooding, that will affect the population whether it is large or small. And so it's not important how big the population of individuals is. The density independent factor, the abiotic factors, still tend to be very disruptive. Okay, let's take this through to some quick questions, about 3 minutes on this. Pause the video, and then when you've got your answers written, why not check out the answers in the description to check your learning. And once you've done that, you can go through to here and subscribe to the channel, please. Here's the playlist. Here's the next video, which we recommend, and a thumbs up for the video, please.